Views and opinions expressed in this program are not meant to alarm anyone, but merely start an intelligent discussion about an interesting phenomenon, the possibility that an intelligent alien life form does exist and is actively making contact with the Earth.
Dear UFO Update, some time ago I was out photographing the Cincinnati skyline at sunset. When I developed the film, one of the frames included what looks like a flying saucer. I thought your group would find the photo interesting. Yours truly, an interested viewer. Now we've all heard the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But what if those words tell a lie? This is an important issue for UFO researchers. Some of our most interesting evidence comes to us as movies, photographs, or videotapes. How do we determine when those pictures have something important to tell us? Can we believe our eyes? Stay tuned as UFO Update examines photographic evidence for UFOs. Welcome to UFO Update. Tonight we have a very interesting review of the photographic evidence for UFOs. With us tonight is John Timmerman from the Center for UFO Studies. Also we have Tim Meckley from Robin Imaging Services. I have fellow researchers Pat Packard, who is the president of the Associates for Scientific Knowledge, and an associate of ours, Chris Coffey. It's actually her first time here. Welcome all of you. Our topic tonight is about the evidence for UFOs as we get photographs and videotapes, and even, I guess to a smaller extent now, movie film. And to a degree, we sometimes are inundated with some of these images and are asked to come up with an answer. Chris, in your opinion, what makes for convincing photographic evidence for UFOs?
Well, it's not the photo alone, it's the eyewitnesses along with it, but I think that one video that showed the saucer over the tractor out in the field where the crop circle, I think that stands out. I thought that was pretty convincing. Yeah. But it's not the photo alone, it's the people who witness it.
So, in other words, it's the overall substantiation that goes along with the evidence, whether that's a photograph or a videotape, right?
Right, because technology has gotten to the point where you can hoax and make it look, you know, just like a real UFO sighting. So,
Pat, I'd like your view on what makes for a good case for photographic evidence of UFOs.
Well, first of all, today we really can't tell a good photo from a bad one with the way computer technology has gotten into the field. But we have a number of photos and videos that were taken from multiple locations, hundreds of witnesses on the scene at the time. We also have some, for instance, the Escamilla tape that just ran from Roswell, where a news organization went out and filmed the same thing that he had seen. So it's partially the provenance of the film or the document, and the number of witnesses, the credibility of those witnesses, and still we rely on the analysis of the tape or video, but it's getting tougher and tougher to do that.
Yeah. Tim, you are from Robin Imaging Services, correct?
Correct.
What do you actually do there?
I actually put together photographs for other area photographers. I clean up photographs. I do all sorts of imaging that is dealt in the photographic process, but using digital equipment such as computers.
So you do get your hands on the latest technology for imaging.
Absolutely.
You saw the photograph that opened our program.
Yes.
Just by looking at that, what do you make of that picture?
It's a very, very, very good hoax.
How can you say that just by looking at it?
No, you can see certain grain structures and stuff, but the best part of all is a week ago you guys came to me with a negative of a model you'd shot of a UFO in the studio and a city shot.
Uh-huh.
And I put them together.
Yeah, it sounds like we're the criminals here.
Yeah.
Could you just for our viewers, in a simplified form, explain that process? Is it like the old style double exposures that people have seen, or does it differ in some way?
It is in the same way that you're going to come up with the same result, but in this way you're going to come up with a much more convincing result. We're going to scan both the negatives in. We're going to put them on top of each other, literally. We're going to dress them up and light them in all within the computer, and then we're going to output them right back to a negative.
So what you're saying is that in this process you can actually produce a hoax photo that has a corresponding negative that might be able to fool someone as being a genuine, on-the-spot photograph.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's very interesting. What do you think the odds are that an analyst would be able to detect this kind of trickery?
Depending on how much money you want to put into it, it's almost nil to none. With the technology out today, when two pictures are brought together and built out, as in rendered the same way to a negative, there's no grain structure shift. There's no, in the old days when they were dodging and burning the pictures in, you can't see that anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Let's take a look at how this hoax was pulled off.
What we've just tried to do is show how a photograph can be simulated to make it look like there was a UFO over the Cincinnati skyline. Shooting the photograph on a white background, adding some gel to simulate the sunset behind it, doing different things to make Photoshop easier with the white background so that that can be taken out of the photograph and have the model pasted on the photograph that we wanted to use.
Now I'm going to show you how we pulled this whole thing off by combining the cityscape and the UFO still with the photo CD scanner. For the layman, all I did was insert the 35mm into our holder here, clicked on exactly what film it was, and got my preview, looked at it to make sure it was okay, and scanned it in. This machine's set up very simple. Same with the UFO. Then we're going to take the disc, once it's finished writing, over to one of our computers and bring both images up and edit them down to be able to fit on top of each other. And I'm going to load my photo CD that we just got done scanning into a CD carrier. The workstation is a PowerMac 7100. You really need a lot of power and speed and a lot of RAM in order to work with these files. Now that our CD's loaded, we're going to open Photoshop, which is one of the main programs out on the market right now that's used for all photo retouching. We also use something called Live Picture. It's a much more expensive program, but also with the expense you get the higher detail in retouching and the more variety of capabilities you can do with pictures. We're going in now to acquire the UFO image off the photo CD, which will be all the way at the end. But there's our cityscape, and there's our saucer. So first I'm gonna do a little editing on the image and just bring in what I need. This basically helps us keep the size to a minimum. Exactly what we need to use is what we're going to use. We also have to pick our resolution. Like I said before, the photo CD scanner gives you 5 different resolutions. And so I'm picking my highest resolution because I want my negative, when it comes back out, to look like nothing has ever been done to it. Okay, and now I'll open that one. This is the cityscape that the photographer took. I'm retouching small scratches or dust particles or anything that might have gotten into the film when it was scanned. And I'm using such tools as the rubber stamp or a airbrush just to lightly go over them slowly to bring other pixels and parts of the image over top of it to where you really just can't tell that anything's been done. I'm using a cloning tool in order to just clone their still blue background on top of any white spots. Once we have the ship exactly how we want it selected, I want to make it have a presence in the picture, like it's just barely there. So I'm going to feather the edges of it a few pixels so it sort of really blends in, and then I can do the rest of my work once I get it in the picture itself. So now I'm going about using the magic wand tool and selecting the entire blue background. In order to, as the computer draws, I'm going to come in tighter down here in order to bring my selection up tighter against the UFO. Now that we have our saucer in the position we want, we need to add its accents with its lights and its shadows. As you can see, the sun and everything. So I'll do some retouching, which will take me a couple hours maximum, in order to get the purples and the yellows that the sun is giving off. And then when I feel it's comfortable that the nag will be clean and not show any imperfections, I'll shoot to our film recorder and get a final nag for us to print up.
And the negative is no telling.
No telling.
But I think that brings up an interesting point, and that is that computers have sort of put us in a precarious spot. Sure. But haven't they in fact helped us with the older photographs where we've got negatives from the 50s and so forth and so on, and we can analyze them now by computer.
By using the computer, exactly.
And in fact, some of those have been adjudged good. That's been done innumerable times on some photos. So.
Well, I think I'll turn my attention now to Mr. Timmerman. John, for the benefit of our audience, we've often mentioned the Center for UFO Studies, sometimes by its acronym QFOS, but we've never, I think, taken the time to explain what they do and who they are and what your role is with them. So take it away.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about my favorite avocation. The Center for UFO Studies, as it was originally named in 1973 by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, was established as a result of so many cases coming to his attention after the time that Project Blue Book was terminated or closed down in 1969. In 1973, there was a surge of sighting reporting throughout the United States and elsewhere. And many of the people with whom he had come in contact during the Blue Book years, from the late 40s, 50s, and 60s, were contacting him, asking him to do something about this massive information which was becoming available not only to the general public, but to scientists of a variety of disciplines who were wanting to know who was going to pursue this, you know. Mm-hmm. And so he found in the fall of 1973 the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, or actually it was in Evanston, Illinois, when he was there at the Department of Astronomy as chairman at Northwestern University after an interesting career up to that point. Dr. Hynek found that he needed help, so he called upon people he had been in touch with earlier and formed what he referred to as a invisible college, right. An academic group of people, or a group of academics and others with special technology backgrounds, and asked them to assist him in the serious and hopefully scientific pursuit of some of these interesting cases, many of which have become historically significant in publications by others as a result of those studies. Well, anyway, the organization progressed. He employed the services of a man named Alan Hendry, who became his chief investigator. Right. And he employed the services of a woman who became the secretary in an office there, and they situated themselves finally in Evanston at 1609 Sherman. And it was when they were there that he was called upon by Spielberg to be the consultant to a book which had been a book title which Spielberg had devised based on a book that Alan Hynek had written called The UFO Experience. But the book, of course, that Spielberg pulled out and made millions and millions of dollars on was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a term that Dr. Hynek devised in a way of naming the barrels into which he was putting the cases he was getting based on the way in which they were observed and found.
John, I want to ask you a question right now, because there's something that comes up all the time on this show, is that the UFO abductions, when they had the little creatures at the end, that all these abduction memories are spawned from this movie, or partially spawned anyway, from these little things running around in the shadows. Isn't that, in fact, backwards? Wasn't that information that he brought to Spielberg to help design these, or is that true?
I don't know for sure about that because I never asked him the question and I never overheard a conversation about it. Okay. But my guess would be that Alan was privy to an awful lot of information because if you may well remember the Pascagoula event of '73, that was only one of a few that were given nationwide visibility, and I've heard it said by others who've taken the time to investigate that there were hundreds, literally hundreds of abduction cases which emerged eventually that had occurred during that period of time. And in the gathering of that information prior to the production by Spielberg, I'm sure that someone was contacted because our office in Chicago was called upon. I wasn't there at the time. I arrived after that. To provide information for the creation of that movie. And with Dr. Hynek being a consultant, I don't know what he provided in detail, but I can't imagine that he would have overlooked the physiology or the appearance of the entities that have been reported by the people having had what they think were abductions.
Now, clarify your role with the center.
Well, it was after what I've already told you that I began to show up. I had begun investigating cases in Ohio as a result of curiosity as an undergraduate at Cornell University in 1947 when the Roswell event occurred about which I knew nothing. Right. But another one did occur, June 24th, about which everyone has heard a great deal. And that one appeared in the paper, and I, when I graduated in '50, went back home to Ohio. Here we are. And found that Ohio Northern University, right near where I live, was engaging in a study of this subject led by the chairman and various members of the departments of engineering and various other departments. And read about it in the paper, offered my services. They asked me to check on cases in Lima, and I became interested and curious, found that people I'd known all my life had admitted to me in secrecy that they had seen one of these things or been near one or experienced what they thought may have been one. And so I just began paying attention. And over the years, in the 50s, the 60s, and into the 70s, I ran across a lot of people who had had experiences because I had gone visible a little bit in my town, and in doing this I was doing other things as well, and had achieved some degree of credibility as a citizen before my interest in the subject. Anyway, it blossomed, my curiosity.
Sure.
And I became a member of NICAP, read the APRO stuff, and several books on the subject, not Adamski, I didn't care about that. But I decided that I would try to help Dr. Hynek at a time when I had the opportunity to sell a company I was involved with and had owned. Sold the company, had a couple of years, called Dr. Hynek's office, or wrote to him actually, sent him a check for $100 and said, I'd like to help you, I have some time free, what can I do?
Right.
Well, nothing happened. And pretty soon I wrote another letter indicating I'm still ready. If you're ready to have me, I'll be glad to help in any way I can. Well, the secretary saw it and decided that Alan needed some help from somebody who had some experience in routine business, like buy and sell and all that sort of stuff, and what to do with money. So finally he called me at my office and asked me if I would meet him in Columbus and talk about my possible participation on the board in Chicago, come to meetings up there and help him do something. Well, I told him during my conversation with him at the what was the name of that place? In Columbus. Anyway, I tape recorded the conversation. And some of the comments he made at that time are priceless. It's really interesting to remember them. But I told him, sir, I'm not sure what you want me to do, but I think I'd like to do it, no matter what. And I began going to meetings. They found out that I had little or nothing to do at this point because I had sold the company, and the man I sold it to wanted me to go away. And they asked me then to fill in as chairman to preside at the meetings, not really be a chairman as such, because my background and experience in the field didn't justify that. But Dr. Hynek, who had been trying to preside at the meeting, would kind of wander off this way and wander off that way, and so they needed to have some control. And I was the guy with the brakes. Anyway, I got into it. I began going to Chicago, spending time there, and I found that they were going broke, and he didn't know it. And I told him what he had to do or quit, and he did it. And so what they did, moved out of the offices in Chicago where they had been, moved in Evanston rather, and I took the business aspects of the organization to my home in Lima and left all the research work and files and everything, of course, with Alan in his home. And we closed down the office in Evanston. And for 2 years then, well, actually for 5 years, I remained on as chairman, and we had an office in Lima. Then we moved it back to Glenview when Alan moved out to Scottsdale, and he stayed there until he died in '86.
Right. Well, as we stated, the premise of the show is to kind of take a look at some of that photographic evidence. Now, Pat, there's something called the Spalding list. Am I correct in that? Just exactly what is the Spalding list?
Well, the Spalding list was the first attempt by the UFO community to computer analyze photos. That began in the late 70s, and many of the photos have been reanalyzed right on through the years when newer technology comes out. Like I said a little earlier, the computer technology in this particular case, because a lot of photos were taken in the early 50s and 60s, has actually helped us in determining that these are legitimate photos. And I'm sure John's aware, a lot of them were up before the Condon Committee, the same photos, and they were judged good by what, in essence, was a skeptical group of people there to debunk UFOs. And right on through, we've looked time and time again at these, and they've stood the test of time to this point. As a matter of fact, I talked to a computer expert. I don't know what else we can do to analyze these particular photos. But the Spalding list lists roughly 40-some good daylight, primarily photographs of UFOs. There are others that have been added, subtracted. Now, this doesn't include all the photos in the world of UFOs. Right. Only the ones we get permission or get the negatives to take a look at, and you know, there's a limited amount of time. And there's quite a few misidentifications and other things on there. But the point is, we have good ones that have stood up.
Tim, just to see if I'm correct on some of this technology, you can take say, a photograph, or probably better, a negative,
Yes.
and you can digitize it.
Yes.
Now, will that allow you to find any kind of inconsistencies in the grain or things that shouldn't be there? For example, if you have a UFO, picture of a UFO, you're expecting to see nothing but clear space around it.
Correct.
Will digitizing something like a negative of a photo, will you be able to detect maybe some kind of supporting structures?
Yes. When we digitize it, it's such a high resolution. You can really go in there almost like a microscope does and look at pixel by pixel what's making it up. And on several occasions you can tell if a picture's been altered, where it's been altered, and what was there before it.
Okay, so you know, because many of the photos that have been analyzed, that's how some of the supporting structures have been located.
Strings and posts.
Wires, sure.
You do this day in and day out, basically. I mean, your beat is photographs,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
So, in your opinion today, if we were to take a negative from the 50s and, I don't know, light blast it, enhance it, digitize it, all those types of things, would we be able to detect virtually any type of fake that's on there? Or is there new technology that may come out, or am I wrong in my earlier statement?
I think you would. I think you'd be able to detect if there was any falsities anywhere in there.
Well, essentially now, if you have the focal length of the lens and a few basic measurements, you can tell the size of the object.
Yep.
And
You
so
can try to figure out where the sun's coming from and figure out the lighting
Exactly.
and where it's throwing shadows
yeah,
and if the angles and everything are correct.
and that's basically what happens in the Spalding list. And they look at the angles, the size of the object, and so forth and so on, and they're able to detect. So, like I said, I don't know. Maybe you do. I'm not a computer expert. What the next generation of computers may do, but I don't think there's much they can do because the pixels are so enhanced now. I don't know what it would be. Do you?
No. I'm just waiting to find out, though.
I think it'd be interesting at this point, before we get to the really good photos, is to discuss some of the maybe more questionable cases that we have as far as photographic evidence is concerned. I think John would probably be the best to guide us through this. Could you give us maybe like 3 cases that you think might be less than authentic?
Well, the first one that comes to my mind that I have great doubts about, not necessarily because of the photography, but because of the circumstances and all the claims that are made, is the notorious, if I can use that term,
Go right ahead.
Willie Myers case in Switzerland.
Right.
My children's mother, my wife, is Swiss, and we've had occasion to go there a number of times. Well, I've never had the courage, I had the courage, but not the opportunity to go there personally, investigate it. But I've spoken to at least one scientist in Switzerland who was a personal friend and acquaintance of Dr. Hynek's on his behalf, and curiously about that case. And this gentleman assured me that all of the Swiss scientists who have devoted any time or attention to it at all have concluded that it is undoubtedly a sophisticated hoax. The part of the problem, however, is that many of people who have spent time investigating it have been unable to prove that it's a hoax to the satisfaction of other people. Now, some people have been able to do that.
There has been some analysis of the Meyer photos where, in fact, it was just on one of the TV shows here recently, where they had composites, like we were talking about earlier, taking one negative and putting it against another negative in front, and then when you go back to that spot, there's no tree there, there's no house or whatever that was in the photo, so obviously it's a hoax. No one
Another
built a house
technique
there.
I think that comes up with the Meyer case is something called forced perspective.
Yes.
And that's where you, that's where you can line up the objects in the picture so that they look the same size, so that I could be standing next to the crew tower and be as tall as the crew tower. So in essence, you can take a small model of a flying saucer and place it in relation to the camera and to your background in such a way that it appears to be, a large solid object. And I think that kind of undermines a lot, because if I remember correctly, they showed portion of the of his film, which I think we can probably show here too, where the craft seems to be circling this tree.
Yeah.
And this is where the missing tree comes in, because nobody else can locate the tree there.
Yeah.
But what's missing is, even though he has only one arm, Billy Meyer, at no time does he try to follow the craft with his camera.
Yeah.
The picture stays perfectly framed
Yeah.
with everything right in the middle. And that seems to go against the natural tendency to try to follow a moving object. So there are a lot of inconsistencies that I think bear
Yes, there are.
bear
And these are
close
the basis
examination.
these are the basis for the comments made by the people in Switzerland regarding this case, and others in this country, of course, as
Right.
Pat knows.
Have there been any other eyewitnesses to that? Other than
Not to the photography.
Oh.
No, only to the evidence on photographic paper.
I think there have been some witnesses, Colonel Wendell Stevens or others. I don't. But the question again, we're talking about the provenance of documents, and I think we're dealing with a questionable.
Veracity.
Yes.
Yeah,
I didn't want to
It's,
say that,
it's
but
not
you
just
know.
the number of witnesses, but the quality of the witness as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're dealing with a couple of variables here that we're
Right. Yes.
difficult
Yeah,
to
that's
handle.
tactful. Now, moving on to another one.
Okay, well, let's see. Another one which has gained a lot of publicity in this country, of course, is one in a very nice climate to spend the time searching down in Florida at Gulf Breeze.
Right.
And the photographer and his wife and the man who manages the newspaper and various other people have been a part of this. Ed Walters is the principal party involved in the photography. He seems to be the primary photographer. There have been others taking pictures of things which are interesting and, again, questionable. I have not carefully examined that case myself, so I can't claim to be very well informed about it. I was advised by others whose abilities in that regard I respect highly, that they believe with all their heart and sincerity and with all the wisdom they have and the experience and information they've acquired that it is and has to be a very sophisticated hoax created by a man who denies having had the opportunity or ability to do it, but who's admitted prior to this and based on his experience and use of cameras almost daily that he could have done it, and claims and things he said prior to the event tend to undercut him a bit. In any event, I read his book and I was unimpressed by it. I believe that it is and has to be a hoax. On the other hand, I can't prove it.
Right.
And a man of great reputation, Bruce Maccabee. Dr. Maccabee has a great reputation. He's investigated other cases and found, I think, adequately that they are, in fact, true and valid cases. He claims he cannot prove that this is a hoax. Neither can he prove it isn't.
We
And
might
so-
add, he's a photo analyst,
True.
Dr. Maccabee, so he does have some weight to his opinion.
He does. He's a very capable person. But that leaves us again in a quandary.
Right. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that Jerry Black.
Sure.
uh,
Spent a lot of time and money looking at other
Absolutely.
explanations
Yeah,
for
he
his
spent
these
a whole lot of
photographs.
time, and he's examined everything from the voice stress analysis test, and the lie detector test, and all these things have a question about their credibility. For instance, he hires the lie detector man, and the questions are not what they should be. They're not pointed questions. They're not.
And,
There's an escape valve everywhere.
There's an
Right.
escape valve in each and every one of these things, and
Yeah.
And what's
makes me
typically,
doubt
I
it.
think, missing throughout the case is adequate follow-up.
Mhm.
Nobody was, there was no third party to these lie
That's
detector tests.
exactly-
It was
Yeah.
just Walters and
And the-
polygraphist.
And
Yes.
So,
Tommy Smith has
Tommy
come
Smith.
out and said that it's a friend of the Walters children, I believe, that he helped Walters fake some of these photos. So there's been lots and lots of photos down here, though, and I really don't know.
right.
But Jeff Sainio recently, the MUFON analyst, pretty much standing behind some of the others.
Sure.
I think because
Yeah.
Gulf Breeze is such a hot potato,
Right.
that he's backed off a little on Ed Walters. But-
And we have to avoid the trap of simply guilt by association. Simply
Right.
because we may have some questions about Ed
Yeah.
Walter's photographs doesn't necessarily negate any other photographs taken in that vicinity.
it-
Because
right.
clearly, even before his photos came out, there was some concentrated UFO activity down there. In fact, it may have
Right.
been inspiration.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an opportunist there. He gets the inspiration, and in fact, a lot of Jerry's investigations centered around the newspaper and Dwayne Cook and the possibility that this was contrived to raise circulation for
Yeah.
the Gulf Breeze Sentinel, or whatever the name of the paper was. So,
Okay, let's turn our attention now to some of the more reliable photographs. Of course, now we have to make the distinction that even after analysis, we cannot say that any given photograph shows an alien spacecraft. All we can say is that it shows something unidentifiable. And if the picture shows it in the air, I guess we can call it a UFO. But we tread on, I guess, thin ice again if we try to identify the object as an alien spacecraft. Now, bearing that in mind, let's talk about what you think are some of the more authentic or believable pictures.
Yes, I'll have to defer a little bit here to the experts. I'll have to turn to men like Bruce Maccabee and others who have examined some of the cases. I'll mention one in particular. The first one that comes to mind, to my mind, and I think to maybe the minds of many others, is the McMinnville, Oregon case. Paul Trent and his wife. She was, this was in 1950, as I recall, in March, a long time ago, at a time when the special work that Tim does would not be available to any technology that we can imagine. The photography, the two pictures were taken. They were taken, I believe, in the morning, was it, or was it late afternoon? I don't recall. The shading and shadows involved were part of the contention that some were wrestling with. But anyway, what happened, she went out to feed the chickens or do something, and she saw something strange in the sky. She got Paul's attention. He came out and then went back in, got his camera, came out and took two pictures of a discoid object, which by Bruce's measurements and calculation tends to have been somewhere around 30 to 35 feet in diameter, roughly a mile away, had a flat bottom, sort of a beveled and dome-shaped top with a little spire slightly askew up top, center. And the other picture shows more of it in a lifted edge view so that the bottom appears to be dark, but the tip of that little spire is still visible. These two pictures have been subjected to all kinds of scrutiny, and the consensus of the opinions of many people, not just Bruce, seems to be that they are in fact valid photography of a completely unknown object. There seems to have been no motivation whatsoever on the part of the Trents to make any money of this thing. Matter of fact, when somebody or Dr. Hynek went out to find the photography or talk to them about this, they found it under the couch in the living room. You know? That's not where you put it if you intend to put it on a magazine someplace. Here's one of a series of pictures of a strange object which approached the island of Trindade off the coast of Brazil on January 16, 1958. It's regarded as authentic by most who have examined the circumstances and was taken from a Brazilian Navy survey ship. It was seen by nearly all of the crew on deck at the time. This shot of the same object shows a side view resembling a slightly squashed planet Jupiter with a dense ring around its midsection. Here's an enlargement of the object in one of the most interesting photos of a distant object seen in the night sky. It was taken by 14-year-old Alan R. Smith before dawn in Tulsa, Oklahoma on the 2nd of August, 1965. It's unidentified after very careful case investigation and photo analysis. I recently spoke to Mr. Smith, now a grown man, still living in Oklahoma, and still convinced that it represents a true unidentified flying object. This is the first of two photos taken by Warren Smith on July 3rd, 1947, about 60 miles from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It's interesting that it was taken the day before the reported crash of an unidentified object near Roswell, New Mexico, a case now under intense investigation and still unexplained. Here's an enlargement of the object in that previous photo. Analysis has revealed that it was approximately a mile away and about 35 feet in diameter. It looks like an aluminum hamburger with the meat hanging out. The object had descended beyond some trees, then suddenly rose again, and Smith took this photo in a hurry. The object image is slightly blurred. Dr. Hynek examined the photography of the clouds in both of these pictures, and they indicated that there had been very little time lapse between them. Also, Warren Smith was interrogated by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police regarding this incident, and he swore it was true. The penalty for lying under those circumstances would have been a $10,000 fine and imprisonment. And he defied that and claims that these were true photographs of a real unidentified object. UFOs have been reported to be cigar-shaped, and here's one. Here's a photo of a similarly shaped object by Joe Ferrer. He reports that it had a crane-typed rod which moved in, and another of the photos he took of it shows a dome-shaped object in the distance that he said emerged from this long, dark object. No technical analysis is available of this set of photographs taken near Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Nocturnal lights are perhaps the most frequently reported unidentifieds. Here we see a common light configuration, 2 white and 1 red light in a sort of lopsided triangle hovering in the sky. This is most frequently reported. This one remains unknown. More frequently, the color of nocturnal lights is reported as orange. Here's a group of 3 unknown orange lights with visible diameters, and unknown. These nocturnal lights were photographed and were seen by many witnesses between Southbury and Waterbury, Connecticut on May 26, 1988 at about 9:30 in the evening. Careful study of the circumstances and testimony of credible witnesses rule out the official explanation, which will be shown on the next slide. Note the repeating sequence of colored lights around what seems to be the rim of a circular object. The witnesses reported seeing only the lights, no structure. There's a small light near the inner part of the ring, which may represent a star in the distance. And if you'll notice the blue-white, the strong blue-white lights, there are the same sequence of lights going from left to right as you count around. That would be very difficult to do in this explanation as to what the FAA said was going on. Here's an artist's rendition of the FAA's official explanation. A group of ultralight aircraft flying at night in a circle at lower than safe flying regulations. There were ultralight aircraft flying, but they could not possibly appear as they did in the previous unidentified object photo. Somebody is trying to fool somebody else. Here's another true nocturnal light, still unexplained, taken by Stanley Fouch on November the 10th, 1975, when he and some friends were, just about 2 miles south of Kansas City at about 10:45 in the evening. Several time exposures of about 20 seconds each were taken. Here's one of them. At first, the object looked like a distant illuminated cucumber in the sky. Stationary at first, it then took off, and the picture here is a time exposure as it traveled across the sky, varying in intensity and color. The object, if it was an object, disappeared in the distance by virtue of its rapid motion. An interesting sidelight to this case is that months later, a professional scientist, in going over his magnetometer strip charts, noted severe disturbances on the chart, so large that he made a notation on the side that undoubtedly his instrument was acting up. The time of the disturbance? Yes, 10:45 p.m., November the 10th, 1975. I included this shot at the cover of a publication by the Belgian UFO research organization SOBEPS, showing what they term an exceptional case. It was observed, and this photograph taken at the time of a very important case involving Belgian F-16 fighter jets tracking the object on radar during a repeated chase of amazing maneuvers. This was taken October 27th, 1979, near a tidal river mouth at Motunau, an island north of Christchurch on the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. The photographer did not observe the cluster of lights when taking the photo at dawn about 6:15 a.m. He was trying to photograph a boat on the river, but we can't see that boat or the river in the cropped shot of the interesting and still unidentified group of lights that we see here. No structure was seen, just the lights. It is not a lens flare. A commercial airliner approaching Tehran airport observed and photographed these three objects in the night sky ahead of them. The photography is poor, but they called the terminal, and controllers told them that they were observing on their radar objects about 10 times the size of a jumbo jet in late spring of 1978 in Iran. About that same time in the spring of 1978 in Iran, a young student, up late studying for exams, had seen objects for several days and had his camera ready. Out his window, he says he saw this object and photographed it at night. The report reached the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States government, and a copy was released during a Freedom of Information Act case by researchers. The shape resembles that of the three objects in that previous photograph from the aircraft approaching the Tehran airport. Finally, on October the 8th, 1978, in Iran, near the Lake Urmia, a young man by the name of Franklin Ury and his younger brother took this picture from his home while playing soccer in their backyard. His parents were at a school meeting for teachers and came home to find the boys hiding in their bedroom. What you're looking at is that small bump of light at the edge of the roof. Let's blow that up and see a little bit more of the image of the interesting object. This one shows the edge of the house. The enlargement shows just as it was taken by the young student in Shiraz earlier that year. The shape is very similar. The parents swear that the boys could not have gone to the roof and taken a picture of a hat, which this surely resembles. And this enlargement begins to reveal three red spots in the upper section. But the closer we become to the enlarging of the object, the more detail we lose. And the same thing happens here as in the enlargement of the McMinnville photograph I mentioned earlier. But in this darker print, the red spots show up much more clearly. The witness and his family came to the United States, settled near Chicago, where they brought this photograph to the attention of Dr. Hynek. The young Franklin Ury is now a graduate of aeronautical engineering from the California University and swears that this is no hoax. On October the 8th, 1981, at about 11 a.m. local time on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, a single frame of 35mm color film was exposed to a beautiful mountain scene. When it was developed, a sharply focused disc-like object was seen, which had not been seen by the photographer, perhaps because of the single lens reflex camera momentarily blocked her vision at the moment of exposure. Careful analysis has discounted the Frisbee explanation. Then Dr. Richard Haynes, having located no manufacturer making one with a clear circular dome in the top center, mainly because the Frisbee would be difficult to throw very far with that design. And here's an enlargement of the object in that Vancouver Island photo. If you look carefully, you can see the clear dome-shaped center, the sun reflecting from behind the photographer. This hat-shaped white object was photographed near Belotic, Yugoslavia, during 1973, and it remains unexplained. A similarly shaped object was photographed on the west coast of the USA by a man by the name of Rex Heflin. The similarity is strange and interesting. Here's an enlargement of the Belotic object. A young man by the name of James Allen, then of Pitlochry in northern Scotland, reports that he was returning from a photographing trip when he heard a weird whirring sound and looked up and saw this strange discoid object and took a picture of it. Researchers in Scotland felt that it must be a hoax, but Allen insists that it isn't and has never made any attempt to profit from it. It's still not proven either way, hoax or true UFO. The sun is to our right, and the trees on your left in the other photograph were the edge of trees nearby. Here's one of several photos of a dark circular object, slightly blurred, taken by David Knudsen of Surrey in British Columbia, Canada, with an Instamatic X-15. If any of you know anything about astronomy and weather conditions, I'm sure you'll recognize this as a weather balloon at low elevation before it has begun to expand in the higher altitudes into which the sphere will move as it reads information about the Earth's atmosphere. A farmer by the name of Richard Mull found this strange star-shaped set of grooves in his bean field, soybean field, west of Wauseon in northwest Ohio on March 11th, 1983. He could see it from the road. It wasn't too far away. He went to the spot and investigated it, and he found in the center of the depression a small hole about 2 inches in diameter, going straight down to a depth of almost 6 feet. He said there was no evidence of soil compaction to cause this. Utility people and a science professor from the University of Toledo examined the markings, but they could find no explanation for it. The professor was expecting it to have been a meteor strike, but there was no such evidence. The utility people were expecting it to be a blast from an underground service line, but it's not there. We don't know what caused that mark. 3 members of a farming family claimed to have witnessed an unusual luminescent object hovering over their land. After departing, the soil over which the object allegedly hovered was found to have undergone physical and chemical changes, lasting for several months. This is the most thoroughly examined yet unexplained physical trace case on record. 2 young girls were preparing for bed and saw out their bedroom a large red object rise from the soybean field near their home farm and moving swiftly over the house into the night sky. In the morning, they told their father of one of the girls at the breakfast table, and he told them to stop telling such wild tales. You can imagine his surprise when he examined his bean field and found the vegetation wilting where the girls said they had seen the object. This photo was taken sometime later, showing where the beans had been killed by whatever they apparently saw. These 4 photographs were sent to us by a research group in Denmark and represent the work of a commercial artist trying to get some photography for an advertisement, apparently, by the company named on the side of the building. The interesting thing about these is that these were all standard photographs. This one, however, shows this strange anomaly up here, which we don't really know what it represents. If you put a magnifying lens on that, however, and look at it very carefully, you'll see that it looks a little bit like a shaving brush in shape. But there are some interesting rings that go out around this as it goes out, as if it were, in fact, some type of an object moving through the sky in this direction and with a reaction at the back end of it as its means of motion. It's a completely unexplained image, not a lens flare. This is one of the photographs taken by Dr. Hynek from the commercial airliner in the early 1970s, we believe, from a window out of which he was able to see about a mile away or less an interesting configuration at about the same elevation, 33,000 feet in the air. He didn't know what it was. We don't know what it was. But I put my magnifying lens on this, and I see what appears to be a break between this part of the structure and this part of the structure right there, and a little bit of a difference here. And this strangely resembles, if we were to cover this part of it, the shape very often reported by people seeing a discoid object. What it was, we don't know. An unidentified object.
I had a question for you about Mr. Hynek. I was just curious to know, you know, when he started out, he seemed like he was, you know, on the government side, you know, kind of debunking all of the eyewitnesses and all the UFO sightings, but then he turned around. I can't remember what year, but I was curious to know why he turned around.
Yeah. Well, your perception is right. He would have, if he were sitting here tonight with us, he would say that. He would say, yes, to begin with, he thought the whole thing was a joke. It was at the time when people were trying to determine how many people they could get in a telephone booth or how many in a Volkswagen, how many goldfish they could swallow, the whole thing, you know. And it was just something that he couldn't really accept as a scientist. He couldn't believe that these things were really exotic. He knows something about astronomy, being a PhD in astrophysics. And he said, how on earth could an object get here from Alpha Centauri or Proxima at 4.3 light years away? That's a long time to be reading old Life magazines, you know. And so anyway, he just couldn't believe that these represented extraterrestrial vehicles, let alone life inside. But he began to realize that there was just so much going on that he was having a hard time believing that that many people could be deluded, untruthful, hoaxing, liars, whatever you want to call them. But when he was in Hillsdale, Michigan, and there were some girls who, looking out of a window, saw some interesting things, that during a press conference he accidentally, in his poor judgment, made a statement to the effect that very often people see things that they believe to be an object, but it turns out to be methane gas that has spontaneously ignited, which is called marsh gas.
Swamp gas.
Swamp
they
gas.
put in the paper.
Yeah. And of course he said they rushed to the telephones, and he wished he had had a carrot or an apple in his mouth at the time.
Suffice it to say, he kind of changed his tune.
It was at that place, maybe not at that moment. He was very much embarrassed by that event, by his misspoken statement. But he said that the thing that convinced him was investigating and taking reports from 2 of the patrolmen or police officers in the city at that time. He took reports from them that he couldn't believe that they were being mistaken or untruthful. And they were swearing about what they had seen in great detail. And at that point, he said, he began to turn around. He said, something else is happening here that I'm not aware of.
So I'm afraid we're running out of time here. So,
what?
Yeah, it goes quickly, doesn't it?
Okay.
I'd like to thank our guests, John Timmerman and Tim Meckley. Of course, Pat Packard. If you have anything you want to talk to Pat about, you'll see his phone number at the closing credits. Don't forget our newsletter. You'll see the information for getting that in the closing credits. And I want to thank Chris Coffey for being here and really added some dimension to the show here. Listen, keep watching, because as I've always said, and you've read it in the newsletter if you've had that, the best defense against being fooled is being informed. We'll see you next time on UFO Update.